Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 938 of our daily content, and today we have a Patreon request to answer. So, I've deviated a little bit for this one, but I think it makes it a little bit more fun to kind of dance around and play with. It is, as I record this, WrestleMania weekend, so of course, we need to do something a little bit topical because I am a wrestling fan, and this request was specifically about WWE. And the request was what WWE superstars would be binary bonded to what Transformers, which basically just kind of equates down to, what characters are kind of like representative of each other across the brands. So I thought, let's take a look at the WrestleMania 40 card, and I'll just go through a whole bunch of the names, and we're just going to go through the Transformers that I think best fits them. We don't even have to stick to Generation 1 in this case. I think that's the fun part. I mean, can we get the most obvious ones out of the way first, just so we can just get through there and get to some of the more interesting topics? Like, for instance, John Cena. I don't think there is any doubt he is the Bumblebee of the wrestling world. He was, for a long time, he was plastered over everything. Everything revolved around Cena. Even if he wasn't the world champ, things revolved around Cena, which was weird. But, yeah, he was absolutely the face of the franchise for a very, very long time. And to an extent, he still is. Like, his image is still absolutely synonymous with pro wrestling. You don't quote the things he said in his movies, no matter how well they've taken off. What you do is you quote his wrestling stuff. It's still just ingrained into him and will always be the thing he's known for. So, yeah, he's still kind of the face of the industry. Thus, he is Bumblebee. Works for me. If we're going to go on another obvious one, here we have the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. I think with his current depiction and just the way he is set up, he has to be Optimus Prime, right? Like, right down to the color scheme. Right down to he's using the same color scheme right now. I mean, yeah, like, he's kind of taking this leader role. He is absolutely the top hero of the entire company. And it is very much just like the born and bred babyface type. Very much in the role in the vein of Optimus Prime. Just like he is your lawful good paladin. He is like the hero, right? And like he is on his way this weekend to hopefully dethrone the bad guy. Please. That's another story. For now, though, let's stick to this. We'll get into some of the more interesting ones now. We'll go right to Cody's opponent. That would be Roman Reigns. I could go in a few directions for Roman Reigns. Like right now, could you have him as a Megatron? You absolutely could. Weirdly enough, if I'm gonna bond him to a character, I'm almost thinking Grimlock. I'm not in a specific take on Grimlock. I want the Marvel Grimlock, the one who wants acknowledgement, who wants to be in charge because of his strength, his power. He has his own tribe, the Dinobots. I find more parallels than I do Megatron, who is more abusive to his underlings, as well as like there's more in the Decepticons he can distrust versus the Bloodline, which. Okay, Jay aside, yes, they've mostly been loyal, and okay, so I kind of get the parallels there, a little bit stronger, but only on certain depictions of Grimlock, of course. The Marvel one, who is far more interested in himself, then yes, that would be the one I would go for. You could even like equate it down to like early like season 1 Grimlock, like War of the Dinobots style Grimlock. Mostly we'll stick to the Marvel run though. Maybe the IDW. There's a few Grimlocks. Let's go to his Bloodline member. And that would be The Rock. Again, you could go in a lot of directions for The Rock. Can't make him the big hero right now, because right now he's the biggest villain in wrestling. He's kind of overshadowed Reigns in his own storyline. But again, Not feeling Megatron. Spoiler alert, I didn't really find anyone I really equate to a Megatron on the roster right now, especially for focusing on WrestleMania 40. For The Rock, I actually went with The Fallen. He is a huge name from a bygone era, still very powerful, still very prominent, but he has definitely fallen from what he used to be. Morally, one thing, but also in a weird literal sense as well, between all of the shenanigans with, Black Adam and all the weird things that Rock got known for in Hollywood because his star got just a little bit too big for his head. Yeah, he's definitely fallen in more ways than one. I think it's a weirdly appropriate choice. There's another factor in this equation, which is Seth freaking Rollins. This one's tough. This one's tough because I need a prominent good guy, but I need someone who's also kind of in the same vein as Rollins right now, who is very flashy, very showy, and always wants to appear differently every time you see him. So weirdly enough, my head went to Sunstreaker for the vanity of the whole thing and prioritizing appearance, but he's far more eager to fight, which brought me to his brother, Sideswipe. So kind of in that same jock, like he's eager to get into a fight mentality. Where we work the fashion element in is, if I think to Sideswipe's more modern depictions and his more modern toys, tell me a toy that's been used in the modern era as many times as Sideswipe's. Even the Seekers don't really compare to how many times Sideswipe has been redone, and we're still anticipating that mold coming back again. So I feel like that is an appropriate partnership, just for the constant changing of the visual. See, who's next? Oh, well, that would bring us to Seth's opponent, which is Drew McIntyre. This is a really fun one to pick. This one's really fun to pick, and this one just like hit me out a bolt out of the blue because it needs to be someone very strong, very commanding, needs to be a very powerful threat, a very big villain character. I'm going with Tarn. And I'm going with Tarn because right now in pro wrestling, nobody can kill you with words better than Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre on the microphone is being absolutely savage right now, and it's an amazing thing to see. So if anyone can kill you with a word with just their voice, it's Drew McIntyre. So yeah, it works. It works for Tarn in this really weird way. See, let's see. Here's one that got tricky. So we got Jey Uso, and then we have brother Jimmy Uso. Now there are twins and brothers across Transformers, but on opposing sides, that gets really difficult to find. Actually, it's actually it's easy to find characters who are repaints of each other who are on opposing sides, but Bumblebee is not related to Bugbite. So you can't really go with that as a direction. So I started scratching my head and like, now what do I do? Now what do I think? So I had to go with a sibling pair, but it's not the best of fits. I ultimately went with Trax and Needlenose from IDW, where they are depicted as brothers, and it is something of it is something of a decent, comparison. You have two started off very similar and just grew very different and grew apart. I think that kind of works for that angle. I kind of like how that works. But admittedly, this is something I could absolutely do a little bit more research on. There are a lot of familial characters in Transformers, surprisingly enough, but to find ones on opposing sides is actually kind of difficult. So it's actually something I might look into more down the line. All right. The Ring General, Gunther. So, what do we do with the former Walter? So, I need someone that is very difficult to defeat. That's the problem in Transformers, is that every villain is made to be beatable. So, there's no such thing as an undefeated Decepticon. There's just not. So I had to have someone who kind of fit the same mindset and kind of the same stature character-wise, and I came up to Shockwave. Very, very difficult to defeat, very powerful, far more ruled by logic and reason than Megatron is. And that kind of fits to Walter to some extent. I kind of find that a little bit more appropriate than anyone else I could think of. And again, does not tolerate the foolishness that Megatron tolerates amongst his ranks. Shockwave is very rank and file, very much, stick to the plan type. So, actually fits pretty well, I thought. We'll go to one of his opponents, and then we'll get to one later on, and that is Kevin Owens. Kevin is, Kevin's very blue collar in just presentation and appearance. He's kind of like a modern Stone Cold, like everyday man type pro wrestler. So, coming up with him, my mind settled ultimately on Trailbreaker. Because, well, number one, what's more blue collar than a pickup truck? But also, it just kind of fits, he's much more gruff, rough around the edges, big guy, still very solid and powerful, and someone that, if it feels like if you got to know him, would just go have a beer with you. And if you know IDW Trailbreaker, you absolutely know he's down for that. For me, that's kind of where Kevin Owens lives in Autobot partnerships, at least for now. Kevin's one of those that can turn heel on a dime. So this list is not evergreen. I understand a year from now, half of these people are going to be faces or heels. They're going to have flopped. So yeah. I was mistaken. Hang on. I was mistaken. So no. Kevin Owens made me think Sami Zayn. That's why I made the opponent for Gunther. No. Kevin Owens is one of the two opponents for, Logan Paul. Who, if I'm going to associate with any Transformer and, in our multiverse of transforming robots, I hate this man. I hate this man very, very much. I hate that he is actually good at pro wrestling. And I have to acknowledge that. But the rest of him, no. No, screw Logan Paul. Let's move on to someone who is actually worth paying attention to. Becky Lynch. So for Becky, okay, this is going to be completely obvious. I hate that this one is so obvious, but we're going to go with RC, particularly the IDW version of her, because it is, because she is kind of this character who went from being, kind of plain and ordinary, as whether you are taking like IDW Ancient RC or just G1 RC in general, having a moment where she just snaps and goes off and then just becomes a badass. That is very much IDW RC to me. That is very much Becky Lynch to me. And questionable writing and questionable origins aside, IDWRC is a very, very powerful character, even like notwithstanding female characters. That's very much the man. That's very much Becky Lynch. There is her opponent, and this was the easiest choice on the entire list, Ria Ripley. There really isn't any other option here. You're probably thinking of one. You're wrong. You're probably thinking of Black Arachnia. No. Arachnid. Because Black Arachnia is very femme fatale, use feminine wiles to manipulate type. That's not Ria Ripley. Ria Ripley is Dommy Mommy, and that can only go to Arachnid. Just powerful, gothic as well, right? Very commanding presence, very strong character. Very easy choice for me. Probably the easiest choice on this entire list. Let's go to my favorite. As long as we're into the women right now, let's go to just a couple more. Because I don't want this video to go too long, because it's a huge card. I can't make this video go on forever, or it will go on for longer than WrestleMania itself. So we'll go to my personal favorite on the female roster, Bayley. When I think of Bayley, I think of just how dependable she is. I think of just how much she can carry in the terms of just the division itself. So I'm thinking RC from Prime, because this was our female Transformer for a long time. You know, it's a very, very popular depiction of RC for starters, but it's also the female Transformer that's just holding up that era of the franchise for years. Because it took a long, long time before we started getting strong female characters from the IDW comics or from any other fictions. You know, even animated didn't really have that kind of element. So this was her carrying the female division of Transformers, and that's what Bayley did. Whether it was NXT, SmackDown, you put Bayley on the roster immediately gets better because she's carrying it on her back. That's what Bayley does. And that's kind of what Prime RC did. So there's your partnership. How about the newest girl on the block, Jade Cargill? I will admit, this is probably not the best choice I could have made, but honestly, there's a weird thing about it that fits, and I'm kind of into it. I went with Pyra Magna because very strong, very commanding presence, very large for her, for being a female Transformer. Immediately commands a leadership role as soon as she takes the floor. Immediately has importance on her. Yeah, Pyra Magna was a character that was designed to step into the fiction and immediately be a big deal, and that's kind of what they did with Jade Cargill. She is immediately being treated as this enormous talent. She is. She's a really strong talent. It's not the strongest character, but also it's one of the newest female characters in the fiction to walk in. So I kind of got that equivalent in there as well. Okay, video is getting a little bit long now, so we're just going to hit a few of the other big stars just to make sure they are covered for. Like I said, this thing could go on for literal hours. I want to keep it to around the 20-minute mark as usual. Let's go with Rey Mysterio. Been around forever, still very impressive in the ring. We're going obscure. We're going to take a cut for him, and I'm going with Great Shot. Now, the obvious one is the constant changing appearance, because Six Changer, Rey Mysterio, who I think I've seen like a few times where he's repeated masks and ring gear. It's very rare. I pity Mattel, who has to keep up with his toys. But it works for me just because of the constant switching, but also I need someone who can keep up with Rey Mysterio, so I had to go with a ninja character. I had to go with a ninja character in order to keep pace with Rey. So I think it works in both areas. And now we end with just a little bit of controversy. Just a little bit of controversy, because I gotta leave you on one that gets people talking. CM Punk. Very divisive. So, if we're coming up with a Transformer that I can binary bond him to, or a Transformer I can just equate him to, gonna be an odd choice. Starscream. Hear me out. Very, very popular character. Yes. One of the biggest names in the industry. Yes. Very good talker. Absolutely. On the other hand, I really wouldn't trust him. He's probably talking about you behind your back. And if you happen to see him in person, you'll usually find him in broken condition. Hey, there's the one to go out on. Ha ha ha. So that's my look at pro wrestling and how the WWE can relate to the Transformer brand. It's not a video for everybody, but it's kind of fun to come up with weird things like this every now and then. So thank you very much for the request. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope everyone did. And as always, I will see you next time.